Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Forbes senior contributor, Adam Minsky. Adam, thanks for coming on again.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
You're a
Always good to be
stu-
here.
Good. You're a student loan expert, and so there's a new announcement that I wanted you to break down for us. The Education Department recently announced it approved $42 billion in student loan forgiveness. Obviously, that's a huge amount of money. Where's it going?
So the announcement sort of broke down where those loan forgiveness funds are being sent to. A good chunk of it is through new flexibilities under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is geared towards borrowers who devote their careers to nonprofit and government work. Under the limited PSLF waiver, which actually ended last fall, the Department of Education relaxed a lot of the stringent rules surrounding what can count toward loan forgiveness for the public service program. It requires 10 years of qualifying payments. And because of those relaxed flexibilities, a lot more people were able to qualify and get credit towards loan forgiveness. Those applications that were submitted through last fall are still being processed. And so it looks like they have continued to process some additional billions in student loan forgiveness under that initiative. Some other initiatives include borrower defense to repayment, which allows the administration to cancel the federal student loan debt for borrowers who were defrauded by their schools, usually through some sort of misrepresentation. So a good chunk of loan forgiveness has been awarded through what we call group discharges for borrowers who had attended a certain school or chain of schools, like Corinthian Schools and ITT Tech, both of which collapsed several years ago. And then another chunk of that $42 billion was awarded to borrowers who are disabled. There is a federal loan program called the Total Permanent Disability Discharge Program that can wipe out the federal student loan debt for borrowers who are unable to maintain gainful employment as a result of a medical condition. And through a new information sharing initiative that the administration launched between the Social Security Administration and the Department of Ed, they were able to identify borrowers who are disabled and would automatically qualify for relief without having to submit an application. And so a number of borrowers got relief that way as well.
This impacts 615,000 borrowers at least, so it's a good chunk of people. But student loan relief, as we all know, continues to be an extremely political and partisan issue. What has the response been to the latest relief announcement?
Well, I mean, so a lot of Democrats have celebrated it, and perhaps unsurprisingly, a lot of Republicans have derided it. We live in very partisan times these days. Actually, congressional Republicans are taking steps to try to reverse or nullify some of these initiatives. Just this week, House Republicans will be marking up legislation under the Congressional Review Act, which can nullify and reverse recently enacted federal regulations. They're going to try to reverse President Biden's most recent extension of the student loan pause and also repeal President Biden's one-time debt cancellation plan, which would cancel $10,000 or $20,000 in federal student loan debt for millions of borrowers. That has been held up in federal court as the Supreme Court considers some legal challenges, but congressional Republicans are going to try to repeal that through the Congressional Review Act. Separately, House Republicans are also trying to engineer a repeal of some of these initiatives in negotiations with President Biden over the debt ceiling. So there's sort of multiple fronts here where there's some partisan fighting for sure over these relief programs.
Does it look like the Republicans' actions will have legs? Does it look like they can actually repeal President Biden's actions?
So with regard to the Congressional Review Act, it requires only a simple majority in the House and the Senate to pass, which means it's not subject to a Senate filibuster. It very well could pass the House where the GOP has a slim majority. Democrats hold a slim majority in the Senate, but it would just take a couple of Democratic senators to defect and to join all Republicans for it to pass the Senate. But even if it also passes the Senate, it would still have to be signed by President Biden to become law. And it's highly unlikely that President Biden would do that since these are his signature programs. He would be much more likely to veto it. Congress could override his veto, but that requires a 2/3 majority, which is probably unlikely to happen. It would take a lot of Democrats to join Republicans to reach that 2/3 threshold, given the very slim majorities that both parties have in Congress right now.
I do want to break down the legality of this most recent announcement. As we know, back in February, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in two cases regarding President Biden's sweeping student loan forgiveness plan. So, is this most recent announcement legal?
Well, this most recent announcement covers a number of initiatives under a number of different programs. The only program that's currently before the Supreme Court is the one-time debt cancellation plan, which is that $10,000 or $20,000 in federal student loan relief. There is a separate legal challenge over the president's latest extension of the student loan pause. That's pending in a lower court. We won't know the outcome of that. A lot of these initiatives were enacted under the HEROES Act of 2003, which is a federal statute that basically says that the U.S. Department of Education can modify federal student loan programs or even waive certain requirements during times of a national emergency like a pandemic. That specific question is before the Supreme Court, but only insofar as it pertains to the one-time debt cancellation plan, which again is separate from these initiatives. So we might not have a clear answer from the Supreme Court on these other programs.